Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. The Old Man and the Locomotive. Background. So, some time ago, 2012, one of my customers was a certain railway. This story was told to me by the old man that came in from that railway to run parts and place orders. He didn't like to use the phone, always in person. He even gave me the gate code so I could wander around unsupervised on the weekends, which I did, and it was amazing. Anyways, this man was long retired, mid-80s, but he hated being retired, so went back to work to do orders and parts. He brought a helper with him for anything heavy, and a yak for as long as you'd let him. He still worked for the railroad for fun. He loved it. It was his life. No kids, never married. I'd say the railway was his wife. Learned many fascinating things from him, but I'll share two here. The first is that they made everything for these trains. I mean it when I say everything. Foundry and lumber mill, from the castings for the locomotives and its internal and external parts and wheels to the woodworking for the seating, dining cars, plates, forks, knives, front to back, everything, all done in-house. They lived there. Housing and stores and everything. Its own city. Because of this, no one but the yard personnel doing the work and the operators really knew much about how anything is made. This is highly relevant. The other is that they never threw any of that stuff away. Even as they developed newer and better models, it's all buried on site at those yards. It's a literal train graveyard and a time capsule. Whole locomotives and cars were buried, all the things they used to build them too. Huge pits. Have seen. Not relevant, just interesting. Background. This takes place in his youth, when he was fairly new to the railway and an apprentice back in the 1940s. He was apprenticed to a man who had been with this railway since the 1800s. He didn't say how old he was at the time, or if he did, I don't remember, but here goes. He told me that back then he lived at the railway. The railway had housing for the workers, and him and his master were pretty much joined at the hip. He said it's like having your super experienced supervisor who's also your neighbor, and your houses share common facilities, so you usually eat together too. His master is a few years from retirement at this point. One day, his master is approached by an internal group from the same railway, but from very far away. The company's throwing a large event, and for this event, they've restored a very old unit to show off. The problem is that after restoring the engine, while it's cooling down, it's seized. They've torn it apart twice, can find nothing wrong with it, put it back together, same thing both times while cooling off, seizes. They are running out of time, hence them tracking down his master. His master is the last employee left they can find that still operated one of these things actively. The locomotive they restored was previously active many years before retirement. It should work fine. They want him to travel out of state to their yard to help diagnose the thing. He says he already knows the problem. He tells them he can simply give them directions, but they solidly refuse. He must go in person. He asks for $500. Going on this trip is going to put him way behind, and it's a long trip. He wants compensation. They refuse to pay him anything close to it, and he refuses to go. They leave. A couple weeks later, they come back. They've rebuilt it a third time, and it's still seized. They're coming up on the date of the event, and they are in panic mode, having heavily advertised the appearance of this locomotive for the event. This time he says $600 and nice accommodations for the trip, all paid, as in the company will foot bills for nicer food/hotel, and all time on the road is on the clock. They, visiting group, agree without batting an eye this time. This is going to save them from a major embarrassment. He makes them take apprentice with for assistance, which they didn't even argue with. He told me they even had a driver to take them, packed, and they left the same day. Took their regular tool bags and nothing special. He said it was a 2-day ride up, and they stopped at the nicest places they could for meals, stayed in nice hotels. Finally, they make it to the rail yard. Several very anxious people waiting for his input. The locomotive has not been touched since they last put it together. The first thing he does is grab his caliper, walks down both sides of the locomotive, taking measurements and making occasional markings. Then he has them fire it up. It, of course, runs fine. He repeats his first steps, and he has them cool it down. Sure enough, as it's towards the end of cooling down, cling, the sound of the engine seizing. The old man telling me this always yells this part and made me smile. Cue mass panic by local guys. It cannot be rebuilt again this time. Master, on the other hand, walks the same route along the engine, making a third round of measurements and markings. He then requests a sledge from the locals, grabs the sledge, and walks the engine again, this time giving a solid whack in certain marked areas. He repeats it a few times on each side. Master, try it now. It turns over freely. Master, do that, hammer, on there, markings, every time. Said the other group was a bit shocked but thrilled, and then requested he write down what he did, like he offered in the first place. The trick here was that in all the in-house work they did, with the early units, every engine was unique. They had relatively poor control of the metals and casting in general. Differences in the molds and castings created different deformities in the cylinders. Bad metallurgical control back then made large differences in voids and inclusions in the metal, and as it was cooling, the differences in expansion would cause the pistons to catch. You had to know the engines, judge the differences in the casting by the color of the metal, and know where it lay cold and hot. Then once you figured out where it was stuck, you had to break it loose, banging on it from the outside at that area. Each engine its own creature. Later in production, the technologies and techniques matured, as did the metallurgy, and it became a non-issue and everyone forgot. So, he got his only ever paid vacation, and his master got a nice fat bonus for an hour and a half of work, all because they wouldn't accept him writing down to measure it a few times, then beat on it in the odd spots, which was the gist of the written instructions he left behind afterwards. Nope, they said he had to do it himself, and he did, all the way to the bank. And our next story. You want me to do that, officer? Wrong department, buddy. So I worked for the IT help desk of our local city council. When one early morning at around 5:30 a.m., my mother stormed into my room, scaring the crap out of me and my cat. Half asleep, I asked why she was screaming at me. Clearly in a panic, she told me that the police were on the phone asking for me. Now, I won't go into detail, but suffice to say, my first thoughts were, what did I do now? And, wait, I didn't do anything, did I? Still half asleep, I walked downstairs, got on the phone, and vaguely asked, yes? I got a reply along the lines of, damn it, it's always the same with you guys. Don't you know it's market day? Me, yeah? Every Wednesday, isn't it? It is every Wednesday. Has been since around 1302 AD. Police officer, what, are you going to start making a joke out of this? Me, slowly starting to wake up completely. No, I just don't get... Police cutting me off angrily. Your car is on the market square, and they can't set up their stalls, damn it. Get over here now and move this damn car. The IT department was next to the market square, so sometimes the car did indeed stay parked there overnight. Me, really having issues with people screaming at me. No problem, be right there. Now, usually I rode my bike to work, but seeing as it was clearly a pressing matter, I asked my dad, who'd awoken from my mother's frantic behavior, to drive me to the market square. On the way there, I explained the situation, and my dad couldn't help but give a chuckle and told me, "Don't do anything stupid." To which I gave him a smile, shrugged, and said with a Han Solo-esque grin, "Hey, it's the cops." My father snickered and shook his head, knowing that doing something stupid was kind of my middle name. If a police officer tells you to do something, you do it, right? So we arrived at the market, where people were already setting up stalls to prepare for the market day, except for where I spotted the car of the IT hardware department, and about 15 meters behind it, a police car with its lights flashing. I got out, walked slowly over to the two officers that were standing near their car. One of them immediately launched into a tirade about how we were all the same and how it was IT guys always thinking they ran things, which basically we did, including their IT. Once he paused, I calmly asked him what he wanted me to do. Again, he blew up, nearly screaming, "Move the effing car!" Not wanting there to be any doubt, I asked if he was sure, and he truly lost it, screaming incoherently words like hole, arrest, and jail. Me, okay, calm down. I'll do it if you insist to let me go up to the office and look for the keys. So off I went. I went to our offices and was met by the cleaning/coffee lady, who asked why I was in so early. I explained the situation, that the hardware department's car was on the market square again. Confused, she asked me, "But that's not your department, is it?" To which I sighed, "Nope. Do you know where the keys are?" So together we looked for the keys, which we found rather quickly. I asked if she'd accompany down because the police were making me nervous, which she kindly and graciously did. Upon getting back down, it was clear that the angry one hadn't calmed down and that I'd probably taken longer to go get the keys than he wanted. In quick strides, he walked up to us, and without a word, I tried to hand him the keys, which he didn't notice because he screamed in an angry and high-pitched voice, "Move the damned car!" At this point, our cleaning/coffee lady looked at me and said, "But you..." I shrugged and gave her the most roguish smile I could muster at the time. She smiled, gently shaking her head. Once more, and just to make sure I got things straight, I calmly and politely asked, "You're telling me I have to move that car?" Now, I'd seen cops get angry before, but never turn red with figurative steam coming out of their ears. He blew up, pulled out his nightstick, took one step forward as if to indicate I was getting close to either getting arrested or smacked over the head. I turned and quickly made it over to the car, nervously but loudly muttering things like "under duress" and "not my job." I got in the car, fumbled with the keys somewhat, and in 3 or 4 tries started the car. I waited about a minute, then the car sputtered forward and stopped. I tried again. Again, the car sputtered, but then it took off like a friggin' rocket. All I remember from the short drive is seeing our cleaning/coffee lady bursting out laughing as I passed just before I plowed straight into the police car. As I was getting out, somewhat dazed, I saw the 2 police officers stand there, white as sheets, utterly perplexed. I stammered at the immortal words, "I don't know how to drive, man. I just pick up the phones and help people." So yes, they called the only person in all the IT department that didn't have a driver's license and just worked the phones. And one that doesn't really like the police, nor getting woken up hours before I have to. I suffered no consequences, as there were CCTV cameras filming it all with audio, which I of course knew, and our cleaning/coffee lady clearly heard the cop order me to move the car. Having known the mayor since I was 12 helped too, of course. So the moral of the story is, always do what the police tell you to do. Hey guys, thanks for watching the video to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.